Which there aren't too many of them.
I'm sure
1 to 3, as far as I know.
I'm sure you know some seniors that I would be happy for you to share this with. But the other thing is that many co-housings are intergenerational. We are thinking senior co-housing here in Morehead because there seems to be a need for it, but intergenerational is also an option. So this is what I was doing. That's my backyard a year ago. And because we had some work done, the backyard was a total mess and I had retired and I was like, okay, this is the summer, I'm gonna get my backyard in shape. And
Yes.
that's where I ended up.
So that picture looks the same today?
The grass was a little slow.
No, you'll see it.
You actually got it finished?
Well, I've been working on it. I'm gonna,
Like that, wherever you like.
That looks
that's
really
long
bad.
enough, I'm gonna move
Yeah,
this.
sure.
I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna move this table out here.
There you go.
There you go.
So I was in my backyard. It was an early Sunday morning. The grass was a little dewy, and I went, boom! I slipped. When I go to the doctor now, they say, "Have you had any falls in the last year?" And I say, "No, I slipped."
Not a fall at all.
And I knew it was broken, and I started hollering. And my husband had his headphones on, so he couldn't hear me.
Oh, no.
So, but my neighbor heard me, so they came out and rescued me, and this is now my backyard, parts of my backyard. I've been working on it, and I'm to the point now where almost all the gardens and the rocks are moved, and I'm ready to put some grass in.
So that you can do it all over again, right?
I'm
We
not
hope
doing
not.
it again, not tomorrow, not the next day. But all of that got me thinking about the past and about the future. And so I started thinking, I have a wonderful backyard, I have a wonderful house. I spent 3 months laid up where I couldn't go to the basement and do my laundry. But my husband is great at doing laundry, so I was very lucky there. But I also thought about my family growing up and my mom and dad taking in my mom's mom and my dad's dad. And they both lived with us. And it worked well most of the time. But I know it was a challenge for my mother. And unfortunately, my mother passed away just 10 days after her mother. So my mom and dad never really had time alone as adults after their kids were gone. And that's not the kind of thing that I want to do for my children. And I bet you all have stories as well. Does anybody want to share a story now about your life or anything around how you think about where you're going to be in 10 years from now? You may want to share later if you don't want to share now. Did you want to share?
Well, I had the same situation. My mom and dad took in, well, not exact same. We took in mom and dad, and cared for them both until they passed. And then when my parents both got sick, I took them into my home and cared for them until they both passed. And God forbid if anything happens that I don't just die right off the bat. I don't know what's gonna happen to me. My son probably
Maybe I have an idea for you now.
I'll probably live to be 100. My son will stick me in a nursing home.
Yeah, well, you reminded me of my husband's parents and my parents. We were raising 4 children as they were sick, and they were not in our town. So we were traveling. I was traveling to St. Louis to help with my mother. Mark was traveling to Texas to help with his dad, and then later with his mother. So it's great that we can help each other, but we're not always right next door. So we think about aging in place, and we all want to do it. And we have been able to do it in the past, but it is getting more complicated. That's a photo of my mom and dad and my grandmother and my younger sister, who was only 6 when my grandmother moved in with us. So my mom was raising kids and do a lot of stuff. Saint Mom is what we call, actually, her name was Claire, so we call her Saint Claire. Which is kind of interesting. But as we move through society, or time, senior living is getting more normal because people they do shift away from their families. One of the things that when I moved to Kentucky 35 years ago, I taught at Morehead State University, and I remember I would have students call me, or at that time was calling, no texting. They would call me and they'd say, I can't be in class today, I am going to my brother's uncle, no, not my brother, my husband's uncle's sister funeral, or something of that regard. And it, for a while it sort of struck me like you're missing class. But then I got smart and I said, family is really important here. And people take care of each other. And those of us who are transplanted don't have family here to take care of us, so we need to think of another way to help us take care of each other. So we have choices. We can stay in our houses, which I absolutely love my house. Got a beautiful front porch, but I have stairs that every which way I go, I've got stairs to go up and down, and that I won't always be able to do. So I might be thinking about some kind of a home that has just one floor. I can move in with or near my children. I have one child actually who lives across the street from me already. And then I have 3 other children who live within a drive. One's in Lexington, one's outside of Louisville, one's in Bloomington, Indiana. So they're not that far away. So we could take care of each other. But as I mentioned, it's hard to think about what that does to their lives. If that's something, it might work. It may work for some people. It doesn't work for everybody. I could move to managed senior living, which the average cost in Kentucky for independent living is $2,400 a month, and for assisted living is almost $3,500 a month. And what we know about moving into senior living is that it can be lonely. Even though you're very close to people, it can be lonely. In close proximity, it can be lonely. And if you've heard our Surgeon General speak about loneliness and isolation, it's an epidemic today, right? And so we need to think about that. So a popular solution in Denmark is to create a socially rich environment, a place where you are around other people, what they call eldering each other. And by the way, there are a lot of us seniors out there. This is data from a report that our Chamber of Commerce did just recently on housing needs in Round County. And 21.6%, there will be a 21.6% increase in household heads 75 years or older by 2027. That's 4 years from now. So that's a big leap. And so we know that there's a need for senior housing in this community. I bet you've all had some experience where you've lived in a community. Can you think of some experience? And what was good about living in the community? What made that a good experience? What challenges were there? Betty, I see you kind of raising your eyebrows like maybe there was a challenge to living in a community.
I was thinking of Girl Scout camp.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I went to Girl Scout camp, and only on weekends. I never went to long camp. But I think my leaders preferred not to take me anymore because I was scared to death of snakes. Even if there weren't any there. Or living in a dorm, or even just in your own community, your own family. Upper right there is my family, and I grew up in a family of 6 children, and to this day, the 6 of us talk to each other. I missed the call this morning at 10, and we talk every Friday morning. We live all over the country, but we talk every Friday morning, and that's a community to me. Even though it's a long distance community, that's a community. Jump here. Okay, so maybe there's this other choice. It's called co-housing. The first co-housing was in the United States. It started in Denmark. It's all over Northern Europe right now. But it was brought here by two architects, Katie McCammon and Chuck Durrett. They spent several years in Denmark studying it, and then they brought it to the United States, and the first co-housing community was built 30 years ago in the US. There are currently about 180 co-housings communities, with 20 or so under construction, others in almost 100 in some level of formation. Here in Morehead, we are in a level of formation. We formed an LLC. We're still working on some of the legal parts of that, an operating agreement, and but we have 5 households that have committed to the LLC, and we are currently looking for property in the area. But what co-housing is not is also an important point to make. It's not a commune. It is not assisted living, so people there, like I've talked about my broken ankle, and that would be, you know, a short-term disability that my neighbors could help me with, and my neighbors did. My neighbors and friends were great while I had a broken ankle. But it's not assisted living where you need ongoing assisted care all the time. But living in co-housing and living in community has been shown to keep people out of assisted living. Because if you're in a community all by yourself and your kids live far away and they're worried about you, they're thinking, oh, you should go someplace where you have somebody to watch over you so we don't have to worry about you so much. Well, if you're in a co-housing community, you have people who are right there with you. You can share, you share a number of things together, but you see each other on a regular basis. And it's also not commercially managed. I mentioned that we formed an LLC. It's managed by consensus by the whole group of people who are living there. It's actually an old concept, neighborhood, a good old neighborhood. Now I happen to live in a good old neighborhood. It's a cul-de-sac here in Morehead, and we kind of watch out for each other and take care of each other. There's just a few houses there, but we do see each other on a regular basis. We have front porches and hang out sometimes. It is an active collaboration of residents, so people take part in helping with the chores around the area. You can hire some of them out. You can ask fraternities for help sometimes, things like that work. And they are intentionally designed for socialization. So the design is such that you will bump into some people, but you're bumping into them close enough that you can see their face, but not necessarily that you have to spend a lot of time with them. You can just say, hi, I'm on my way to the parking lot, and keep going. And because there are a number of people, usually they are between 25 and 40 households, there's a diversity of people who are there. So you get to diversify your social interactions. So what does this look like? Here are some of the intentional design features. And these are designed by the community with the support of architects who understand co-housing and understand the kinds of construction that can create that intentional socialization. I'm gonna point out a few things here. So you can see the private homes are in clusters, and these particular homes are 4 different sizes, from about a 800-foot 1-bedroom 1-bath to about a 1,200-foot 2-bedroom 2-bath, and then there's 2 sizes in between that. All the parking, notice where's the parking? It's not right by your house. It's around the bend. And to get from the parking to your home, you're gonna be walking through the Commons house. So the large home there is the Commons house. And that, also, that can have a variety of things. It generally has a kitchen, a large kitchen, more than what my mother-in-law used to call a one-butt kitchen. It'd have like a 6 or 7. And there are usually regular meals that people share together. This actually is the plat of my sister's co-housing that she started in Stillwater, Oklahoma. It's called Oak Creek. She founded it about, she started about 13 years ago, and she's been living there for 10 years. They actually bought a piece of land that had a house on it, and then they retrofitted the house, added onto it, and made it into the Commons house. And I have to tell you a little background on how she came to co-housing, because it has its roots in Morehead. I was, in 2008, I was on sabbatical from Morehead State University to Frontier Housing, and you all know Tom Carew. And Tom, I went on a conference in Abingdon, Virginia with Tom and several other Frontier Housing people. And Tom and I were walking on the Creeper Trail, and we walked by this whatever it was on the side, and I thought, well, that doesn't look exactly like apartments. What is that, Tom? Do you know what that is? And he says, oh, that's Elder Spirit. What is it? Well, it's these people came together and they decided that they were gonna build a little community. And immediately the bells went off in my head, because I knew my sister would love this. I don't know how I knew, but I knew she would. And I immediately went home, I found their website, I sent it to my sister, and before I knew it, she was gathering people together, buying land, and building. And it's been successful. They have 1 unit available right now, but they have almost never had an available unit in the 10 years that they've been in existence. So besides the Commons house, there's lots of common green space where they do have 7 acres. They were lucky to get those 7 acres, but you can do it on a few less acreage. I mean, some of them are even urban, where you do it, you know, in an apartment style house. Everybody has a front porch and a back porch. Front porches are, and I just learned this the other day. The front porches are about 35 feet apart. And that is very intentional, because when they were designing, the architect said, okay, everybody, I want you to, we're gonna go out on this big parking lot at the high school, and everybody's gonna spread apart, as far apart as you can get. And then I want you, in pairs, so like you would be standing as far away as you could be. And I want you know that the person across from you has had some kind of a difficult situation in their lives. And you want to talk to them, but you want to see what their face looks like before you start talking to them. So I'm going to have you walk together, take like 10 steps forward, and see if you can see that person's face. That's not enough? Let's go forward again. And when you're at a point where you think you could see their face and you're comfortable talking to them because you can see their reaction, stop. And almost the whole group stopped at about 35 feet. So that's how far apart the doors are. So that when you walk out of your front door, and your neighbor does too, 35 feet away, you can kind of see their face and kind of judge, you know, are they ready to talk to me, or do they just want to be alone, or, you know, what is their facial expression? And it's far enough also that you can just wave and say hi and everything is cool. There's little pods where people can hang out. You saw earlier a picture of a kind of a pickup concert. I talked to my sister yesterday afternoon, and she said that she was on her way to their happy hour, and then after their happy hour, they were having a little three-piece band come in and play some music for them. The back porches are generally intended to be your space, so you can hang out on your back porch and have a little privacy. They also have a little rule that the front doors have glass on them, that if your shade is down 3/4, please don't bother me today. If it's up, I'm welcome for guests. Anybody have any questions or anything?
So this is the same place that the video came from?
That-
That you, Betty forwarded us a video. I
Oh.
think it was this place.
Okay, yeah, all right,
But,
yeah,
Door is still wondering.
yes.
yeah.
Oh, sorry.
So, this is a quote from one that's in Blacksburg,
Hmm.
and you may even be familiar with that, Ally, because don't you go to
Yeah,
Blacksburg?
well, we go to Blacksburg. Did Ellie Reeser live in that when she
That's what
first
somebody
went
said the other
down?
day.
Because it was a spot, it was kind of an interesting little village thing outside the main
Well, that's
town. She was
came
in
up-
for a while. She
Uh-huh, yeah. So that you can have your opportunities to bump into people, but you also have opportunities to be alone. And those two corner photos are of my sister's back porch where she can see she's out and actually, it looks like she's out in the country. They are right behind the high school in Stillwater, Oklahoma. So, is co-housing a panacea for aging? No, not really. I don't think any of us have that panacea, but it does allow us to stay in a private dwelling longer. Because you will own your own house and not be in a managed assisted living or senior living, you still have equity in your home. So your financial portfolio is still diversified. Lots of social stimulation. You can go up to if you just, you're lonely or you just feel like taking a walk up to the house, and there's usually a puzzle going or something, and somebody will share. They watch ball games together all the time. You can stay active. So here's something that I think about in Morehead quite a bit. And I think about that when I look around this room. I thought about it when I looked around the symphony audience, when I was at the symphony. I think about it in so many times. I look around and I think, a lot of the people in this room may not stay here for the rest of their lives. They may take their social capital, what they contribute to our community through the Rotary Club or through Optimists or through the symphony or whatever it might be, and move somewhere else. And do we have people to step in there, or do we are you taking your social capital away too soon? That's what I'm getting at. And also, if you leave, you take your financial capital outside of the community as well. We have a number of people, when I came to the university, people came to the university, came to the hospital, and lived in Morehead. And those of us who did that are now aging, and we may decide it's not the place for us to be when we age, unless we have something to look forward to. Today, too many of our young faculty and doctors don't live in our community, and I think this is something that could also strengthen our entire community. There is evidence that having a co-housing in a community kind of bleeds out to the rest of the community and helps to support that energy that is around in a community. And it's complementary to things like assisted living or memory care. One of the things that my sister has pointed out is that she really wishes they had an adjacent memory care right next to there, because they've been there 10 years and some of the folks have gotten to the point where they need to move on to something else. And if they had adjacent memory care, it would be almost like the same neighborhood, and that their own community would be right there, and community members would be likely to walk by and say hi, And when you are in assisted living or memory care, that you know, the research shows that you are more likely to get good care if you have lots of visitors. So we are currently looking for some green space that has good proximity to medical care. Here's another thing about medical care is that the medical providers like it because you're kind of in a single place, or like Meals on Wheels. You're all in one place, so it's much easier to service a group of people. It'd be nice to be close to downtown. It'd be nice to be close to groceries and have some walkability. In Morehead, flat ground is pretty hard to come by, but if you all keep your ears open for us, that would be great. And then I want to tell you about a couple of things that are coming up. One of them, and this was on my slide in the current version, but I don't know where that went. One of the things that's coming up is on June 29th. That's a Thursday night. Upstairs of Sawstone, we're going to have a session, and content-wise, we haven't really settled on what that is yet. My sister, who developed the one in Stillwater, is coming to visit, and so she's going to facilitate this session about 4:30 to 6:30 at the upstairs of Sawstone. It's open to the public. Anybody who wants to come and learn, ask questions, is welcome to do that. My sister can hardly not talk about this. She absolutely, and she told me last night, she said, because we have 3 brothers, and she said, they're always telling me I should charge for that. She just is so invested in it. But so that's on June 29th, and then we are planning probably in the fall a 9 or 10 session series of activities, of seminars that are designed to build community and to start, I mean community of people, not necessarily, you get to the point of designing your on the ground piece, but you also are learning to work with each other and come to consensus and figure out what it is that you want as a vision. When I say you, I mean the group of people who are part of this want as a vision for their community, and generally they actually do write down a vision that can be shared with anybody who wants to live there, so that you can say, yeah, I can agree with that, or no, that doesn't sound like something I want to do. Because there are lots of different ways to age successfully. This is just one option that we're hoping to try here in Morehead. All right, thank you. Appreciate you listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Carolyn just lost her dad, but her parents decided back when they were both, still functional, to retire to, it turned out to be a Presbyterian facility, and there's 2 or 3 of them in Virginia, but this is the one outside Martinsville. And so it has independent duplexes mostly, and some single houses, in the thing. It's a huge place, lots of land. And then it's got the big house, which has the assisted living, and then actually has a memory care unit now, and a nursing home, which of course is where he finally ended up. But and that was their decision to do that rather than to move either here with us or with his son in Whitville, or they wanted to, and they were still independent for a number of years until fairly recently. But it's a very similar thing, but it's owned by it's managed, but that means they have and it costs a lot of money up front. You're buying into the facility. You get a duplex at first, but then you have the assisted living right there when you need it, and you can eat at the big dining area with other folks, but you can also eat your own plate. So it sounds very similar, only on a bigger scale.
Bigger scale, has the tiers.
And it doesn't have the accessibility to I mean, it's
And it's,
often its own, you have to drive into town, you have to drive to where she do that.
that
So-
depends on where you can find
But,
property.
yeah,
to
I
build
mean,
something.
right, exactly, and the property they needed was bigger, and so it had to be,
So
I mean,
one
it's
of the
beautiful, but-
things that, and I think that's a perfectly viable approach, and it's a
Yeah, I
good
mean,
one.
there's a-
I think it works for a lot of people. It
but
worked
as
for
you
my
said, the
dad.
assisted living
Yeah.
being right there is,
Right.
and,
My
So-
understanding is that 2 groups of people in the last 15 to 20 years have attempted to bring
Yeah.
something like that to Morehead,
you got north.
and we
Well, I was
have.
getting ready to say, was that the whole inception of North Fork Senior Living and it just went a different route or?
Do
You
they
know, I
still
don't
have
know
the
about
little
North
nursing
Fork.
home right there?
They have the activity center. I had a friend who was elderly and she lived over there in one of the housing units, and she would still go over there. They would get mail over there. They would have
But it
different
was
activities.
originally there are rooms in the nursing home-ish facility, right?
Is there? I don't know.
I should probably go visit.
There used to be, anyway. Yeah, you
But
probably
then,
did.
but then they
It's
started
small, though.
building
It's
all
very
the stuff
small.
behind it,
Yeah.
and anybody can rent those units.
Right, so it's multi-generational
Yes.
now, but,
Yeah.
Yes.
but I think the original building is probably still kind of.
Give you an idea of
thing.
the demand and the costs for these things. My sister lives in a planned community. I wouldn't say it doesn't have all the recreational and stuff like that, but a small community, small houses. Her neighbors have reached the point where they need to go to assisted living. The buy-in, you get no equity, is $500,000. You give $500,000 in Jacksonville, Florida, to get your 2-bedroom unit, which is a condo, and then it has the next tiers available. But even in the, like, well, 500,000, that's not too bad compared to 6,000 a month. No, it's 500,000 and 6,000 a month.
Oh.
And then when you need the next tiers, they're there, and I presume the fees go up accordingly. But
Yeah.
that's the
Similar
buy-in, and
thing.
some communities there, World Golf Village or whatever, it's
Buy-in
a
wasn't
patio
bad.
home for that. But then when you pass, you pass. You have no equity,
Right.
nothing. You put down 500,000 to be there for as long as you're there, and that's it. Then it's gone, and they sell it to the next person.
Yeah.
I may have missed this at the beginning. Is your planned community like for like a certain age and above, or are you looking at intergenerational like
We-
co-housing?
We are thinking senior now, but I think we're kind of loose about that senior. I think the main thing is that it's adults.
Yeah.
But here's why. It's not that we're anti-children.
I'm
It's.
Donna said she was.
Donna's anti-everything.
She's a senior and she's telling you the truth.
It's because, when, as I mentioned, you decide your own design for your community, and it's by consensus. And when you introduce multiple generations, the needs spread out. And so you have to think more about, okay, what about play areas for children? And well, if you stay at one level, then your needs are narrowed down for the most part, and it's a little easier to come to consensus and to afford it.
I toured a facility when I was in France for Rotary. I did a group study exchange, and it was, I don't know if it was co-housing per se or planned, but it was very like the same kind of model, but they were like almost broken into villages too. So there was like a village for like your older residents and then like your
Oh, that's
families,
cool.
but they had common spaces too where like the older residents, would help provide daycare for the younger kids.
Oh.
And theirs was super like, it was all green, like off grid. I mean, and they even had like a little like, they had like artisan shops that were like being developed only for the people who lived in that like village, and it was very like walkable and bikeable, and I mean it was still all under construction when we were there, but it was really cool.
I'd love to get the name of that if you haven't.
I'll have to look back through my archives. It's been 10 years, so I'll have to go back and look and remember what town it was in. But it was definitely through a Rotary Club that took us there.
Oh, that's cool.
So I'm sure I have it somewhere. I just have a like a folder portfolio of things we did there. I'll just have to go figure out where it is.
What
We
about?
have been working with Chuck Durrett, who
Okay.
is one of the architects who brought it here. He worked with my sister, and she said call him, and so we have been working with him thus far. He lives out in California. So we are starting to talk to other architects, one of whom is in Louisville, studied under Chuck, and she's from France.
Oh.
So I don't know.
She
how
might
she's
know it.
connected.
Yeah,
I know that.
What about dogs?
What about dogs? That's a consensus thing. You, as a group, you decide, can you have dogs? Just as an example, at Oak Creek in Stillwater, they said dogs of a size, whatever size, and they must be in your house or on some kind of restraint if you have them outside. I mean, but then on the other hand, there's a fellow I talked to, they're building one in Montana, and they're building a whole goat place, a little goat farm. So, different ones have different things, depending on what you want.
I think that idea of what you were talking about, the artisan, because my dad used to build bark bottom chairs. He weaved the bottoms in those chairs and rocking chairs, and I mean he didn't do this until after he got so bad that health-wise that he couldn't do his normal job. This was his. I mean, he just sat down and said, "Hey, I think I can build a chair." So he goes and pulls the bark off the trees and starts making all these chairs, and everybody's wanting a chair, a rocking chair, a bar stool, whatever. So I mean, he loved doing it. But now that he's gone, that's gone. Nobody knows how to do that. So if you had those communities mixed in with the younger people and the older people, I think about all the young people that would have probably enjoyed knowing how to do that. And I mean, you could have made a living on it if he was on the internet, back then, YouTube it. Yeah, I mean, he could have made a fortune on those chairs. Where he was selling $300 a piece, he could probably got $2,000 from them. And I think that's an opportunity that's gone. And had it been available to younger people, that they would have picked up the art and that would still been carried on. And now it's just gone.
Some of them have like after-school programs, so they may not have children who live there, but after school will come into the Commons house and get tutoring or
That would
little
be awesome.
or artisan skills, that sort of thing. All kinds of things you can do. This Oak Creek, they have 3 tornado shelters in their parking garage. Underground tornado, and they are very popular among not just their little community but beyond because they're right in the middle of Tornado Alley.
Let's hope we don't become that.
Yeah, let's hope. They are coming a little closer.
Yeah, they are. So you do the buy-in and you purchase a unit, and that becomes yours. If you pass, is that just like if it was your own home and you would deed it, or in a will give it to somebody and there's an executor or whatever? Does that just become your personal property as it would anything else?
So, as you are developing the project, it's an LLC, and everybody in the LLC owns everything.
Oh,
In the beginning. Once it is on the ground and built, then that LLC is dissolved and it becomes an HOA, and you then take over the mortgage for your unit.
okay.
So that one unit then is treated somewhat like a condo, where you are responsible for everything up to the drywall, and then the community is responsible for everything else. So you own your dwelling and there's 24 people, 24 homes, and 1/24 of the rest of the property. And that 1/24 it's not under your house, it's throughout the property, and everything's done by consensus. So one of the questions has been, well, what happens if a developer comes in and wants to buy the property? It can't happen unless there's consensus among all of the community members to do that.
So if my parents lived in one and they passed, and then I came in and I wanted to sell it, I wouldn't be able to do that unless everybody agreed? Is that?
Well, no, you can sell your unit, but that's where the vision is really important, and the vision and the mission of the community, so that whoever you sell it to understands that they're not just buying a house, they're buying into this whole community. And usually Pat said, that's my sister, that when they're selling a home, they have happy hour and they invite the person and,
Yeah.
you know, who's interested in buying and talk about the whole concept.
This would be so nice. I mean, we built my father a home like half a mile from ours on our road, like on our property, in part because, you know, he was living by himself in a home in a city and he doesn't like to answer his phone or return text messages. So my sisters and I were playing paper, rock, scissors to see who would drive by to make sure, you know, he was. So like even now that he's a half a mile away, like we are considering putting up a video camera just so that we have proof of
A
life.
baby monitor or
Yeah,
something?
well, no, like outside, so we have like proof of life every day.
Right.
You know, because sometimes we're gone and like.
Yep, he came out the door.
And he came out the door, or like actually, I think we should put it on the back door in case he falls down the stairs that he refuses to put a railing on. You know, so that I know he's like laying at the bottom of the stairs. But it would just be nice to have a community of people around him.
Yeah, sure.
You know, even if he wanted to be grumpy and not socialize one day, like.
Well, tell them about this. So June 29th at Sawstone is our next event, so, and we'll be having others too.
I tried to get him to come today, but he wouldn't come.
Oh, well,
Would've
you
been
can
nice.
share the video with him.
Yeah.
And if you're interested in the Oak Creek, you just type in Oak Creek, Stillwater, and their website will come up, and they've got videos and all kinds of things to look at.
And Betty forwarded the video.
Thanks, I didn't see it. All right, thank you so much for listening and your questions, and I'm happy to answer other questions. If they come up, just text me or email me. I'll get
A little bit of business for a business